Welcome back, everybody, to the Blue Stable podcast, the official Colts podcast of Fansided. We have a really special one for you guys because we're coming off a win. We got to celebrate that. I want to say it again. This isn't the post-game reaction show, but the Colts are no longer a winless team this year. But even more important, Michael Terrazas is here as always, but that's not the special part, guys. We have a guest. If you followed me and Michael last year, we did a Colts Ravens preview show last year with this guy as well. It was a pretty fun episode. Got a little fiery. He may not be the biggest fan of the Irsay family, but Dave Steinwedel is here, host of the Opening Kickoff podcast. David, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to hold back my comments about the team in Indianapolis is how I'm going to refer to this team that is coming up, because last year when I was on, I kind of explained it. I won't go full in depth on it, but again, this is almost as big as Raven Steelers for Raven fans, because
Wow.
if you certain era, if you are of a certain age, this game means so much and I don't know if you guys have a YouTube, but behind me is Colts, Baltimore Colts, and there's a lot of that history and that feeling of the betrayal by the Irsay family that still lingers, and it's you're going to see it Monday night in the game. There is a lot of majority of the fan base that is, and even like myself, alive when it was when they did that, but you're raised by the people that were there and went through, saw it, and had their hearts ripped out. So this is such a big game, and for it to be Monday night at home, couldn't be better if you're a Raven fan to hand that team in Indianapolis a loss. I'm just saying. I know I'm not trying to rile it up, but it means a lot to Baltimore coming up here on Monday.
Yeah, last year when I knew that we were a good team, it was one thing, but this year, I think I'm going to just let you keep that. This team hasn't given me enough to, push back on your comments. They haven't shown me enough yet. So hopefully that's different this Monday.
Wow. Michael's going to get ran over in this podcast, it sounds like already. But I guess I don't know if the Colts are wearing the throwback uniforms that they came out with this year that are in representation to the Baltimore Colts with the third stripe and things like that. I don't know if they're wearing those on Monday night, but I feel like it's a missed opportunity if they're not, right?
No, because there's be a murder in Baltimore.
My Jesus.
But I mean, in this kind of situation, I mean, is any publicity bad publicity? I mean, even if people are upset about it, I mean, you're getting the attention you wanted.
You have to understand that whenever Indy has come to town to play the Ravens, it can get ugly in the stands. It does, because there's a certain, and it's not with you guys, but there's a certain pompousness among Colt fans about it. And it's sort of, this is not a town you throw it in the face of. You do not throw in the face of Baltimore people, Raven fans, oh, well, we took your team, we took all your jerseys, your logos, and all your records are Indianapolis now in Baltimore. And that always stirs the pot. It always gets it going. So it would be a very intense and probably an ugly scene if the Colts did pull that Monday night.
Whew. I mean, I guess we'll find out. I think they've already posted the games where those are going to be worn, so it is known. I'd have to scroll to figure that out. Maybe like if one of you guys go on a tangent at some point, I'll get on my phone and scroll and see if I can figure out if it looks like that is going to happen. Just so Dave's prepared. I don't want him to have to turn on the game Monday and get all that emotion. I want him to at least know what's going on. But so
I'll tell you, I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're good.
I will say I will be watching it with my dad, who lifelong Baltimore Colts fan. So I can guarantee you, if he sees it and they do what is the dumbest move of all time, which would be to wear those in M&T Bank Stadium on Monday, you can imagine that the reaction is going to be just as bad, if not 10 times worse. And Jim Irsay may want to hire 24/7 protection, and he better not come to Baltimore. That's all I'm going to say.
Man, I didn't know it was that bad, man. I did not know it was that bad.
Again, I gave the history lesson the last time. It's that nasty. I know people that family members that got in fights with Colt fans at a playoff game at M&T Bank Stadium.
Oh my goodness.
Respectful about it. That's how serious these games are to this city, to people of a certain age.
Hey, I respect it. I appreciate people getting that fiery about their teams. Obviously, I'm never going to promote violence. I'm never going to do all that for anyone listening. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean,
will.
people, I just have never been a fan of people that are like lackluster fans, that people are like, yeah, if my team loses on Sunday, like my mood's not changed. No, when the Colts lose, my Sunday is extensively worse. Now, last week, I did go on record saying I was more excited about the Titans losing than the Colts winning. That was a true statement. But I feel like that just goes with just being a very fiery fan personally. But you talked a little bit about the history. We're going to go a little bit to present day Ravens. So what are your thoughts so far on what you've seen for the Ravens through 4 weeks?
I mean, to be honest, this is a team that is overperforming. You consider all the injuries that the Ravens are playing with. You're down your top 3 running backs. You're down one of your top cornerbacks. You have your left tackle may not play at all this season. And when he played in week 1, it wasn't very good. He looked very rusty, didn't look healthy. Now your other tackle is banged up, may not play. I mean, this is a team that in all reality has overperformed in a year that they should not be. I mean, a team should not have as many injuries as the Ravens and being as competitive as they are. So that to me is where they have shocked me as a fan and as somebody that, like you guys, we sit here and we break down and we talk about it, and it's shocking. Now, a lot of that is Lamar Jackson, and I know we'll touch on it a little bit later, but just to kind of gloss over it, I think Lamar Jackson has taken steps that he did not take the last 2 years. He's making throws he did not make last year or 2 years ago. He is becoming the complete package, and that will keep the Ravens competitive. The problem is, and what should terrify you as a Raven fan is, this is not a team that can suffer many more major injuries, because it's you're getting to the point where you're going to run out of people to go to. But right now, they have played well better than I expected. Considering the defense is bad, this is not a good Raven defense. And Mike, Destin, how many times have you ever heard someone talk about the Baltimore Ravens and say the defense is not good?
Not many times under John Harbaugh.
No, and it's a defense that it could get better as the season goes on. I'm not saying that it's going to stay at the bottom, but still, it's not very good right now. It's played better the last 2 weeks, but it's still not a dominant defense. So they have outperformed in a lot of categories in a season that they really should not be.
So quick update before, and then I'll let Michael chime in on anything he saw for the Ravens this first 4 games if he wants. But the Colts will not be wearing the throwback uniforms against the Ravens this Monday. The only game the Colts are slated to wear the throwbacks this year is against the Bucks in that extra game that was given out this year. So it's a home game. So I guess they chose to wear it at a home game instead of wearing it at an away game. I understand what Dave said about that upsetting some Ravens fans. I think it's a missed opportunity marketing-wise for the Colts personally, but I understand the upsetness. But Michael, I'll let you chime in on what you've seen from the Ravens this first 4 weeks.
Oh man, the Ravens. I'm all the way with Dave on this one. You know, considering all the injuries they suffered before the season and in season, I mean, you would think this team is not going to be competitive, but they are. That Monday night game against I was about to call them the Oakland, but the Las Vegas Raiders, man, that was one hell of an exciting game. plays were being made all over the field. I'll get into Lamar Jackson later on in the show. But weapons are starting to step up. Marquise Brown is finally healthy. He's finally not having something lingering, slowing him down, keeping him on the sideline, giving him very, very limited reps. So that is all good. The defense, in my opinion, a little bit overperforming, possibly. I think the toughness up front is still there. The toughness, the physicality is still there. Now, are they executing? They could execute better, of course, but this is still a defense, in my opinion, that I am definitely looking out for this Monday night. I'm not going to take this defense lightly. I'm not going to do any of that. This is still a John Harbaugh defense. This is still going to be a defense that you said, Dave, he is part of that age class where he remembers when this happened and when this switch transition. So he has a lot of intensity going into this week, going into this game, and he's going to light a fire under this team. But through 4 weeks, I think the Ravens have performed well, in my opinion. They're still a very good football team. I actually like what I've seen. I've actually kept a close eye. I've said before the season on a couple of players, teams that I would keep an eye on, and Ravens and Lamar Jackson were one of them. So definitely impressed with what the Ravens have been able to do thus far.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I want to highlight about the Ravens, Vic Fangio in Denver, he can get over himself. That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen from a head football coach in the NFL, going on a tangent about being upset that a team didn't kneel on the last play, but instead just ran for 4 yards to continue a record going. I wish more teams would go for those sad records like that. I mean, it's football. Like, I mean, I understand it's a job for a lot of these guys, and this is like an adult game now, but like, this is still a game. Like, there's emotion in games. Like, I hate when people attempt to just take that out. It's one of the reasons that I am so against this taunting rule this year. But so Vic Fangio, you're not listening, but get over yourself, sit down, get off this soapbox you decided to get on about this. That's ridiculous. Be a grown man and just take it. You lost. That last play was not why you lost, in my opinion. But that's my take on that. But other than that, I mean, the Ravens, like David said earlier, have had some significant injuries happen. J.K. Dobbins in preseason. One of the big reasons I just don't see a need for other than rookies or fringe roster guys getting significant snaps in preseason. I just don't think the preseason's meant for it. Use practice to prepare for the season and get going. I don't think preseason snaps help out any real veteran player, especially if you know they're making the roster. But I mean, for the Ravens this year, I think it helps a lot of people's mindsets on them because the Steelers are so bad. You watch them offensively, you watch them just right now with the Big Ben transition, because you're as good as who you play. And I mean, the Browns, to me, there's just like a feeling behind it that eventually the Browns are going to come to earth a little bit with that roster. And I mean, if Baker has to miss time ever, I still think it's the Ravens division to lose in a sense. So I still think this is a good football team, just to repeat what Michael said to a bit, but I think this is a fun game. I definitely circled it when it first came on the calendar for sure.
At the beginning of the year, I think we talked about the Raven injuries, and I kind of felt the same way you did. But now all the issues the Colts have, this has turned into, I think, a really bad matchup for Indianapolis. Offensive line play is suspect. It's not to get ahead, but it's a matchup that I'll highlight a little later. I don't think Carson Wentz's mobility is there, and I think he's going to be a sitting duck and go ask Teddy Bridgewater if he knows where he is right now, because he was a sitting duck Sunday to that Raven defense. So it at the beginning of the year, I'd say this was going to be a really close matchup. This is because of the way things have kind of broken down.
Mm-hmm.
Season has started. I don't think this is as favorable of a matchup for the Colts Indianapolis as they would like it to be, or probably thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year.
And hey, I mean, that's a really good transition into the next topic that we're going to talk about, which is the Colts through the first quarter of the season. I mean, This is a team where there was a lot of hype coming in about, and then these injuries started coming in. I certainly did not view this team as good as last year with Phillip Rivers. I think at the quarterback position, the difference between Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz, in my opinion, is mental toughness, football IQ. I think those are the two biggest things that separate Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz. Phillip Rivers was a technician at the quarterback position. I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He was so smart. He knew what to do on every play. With Carson, I've spoken a little bit on the show. When he has these injuries, do you have the mental toughness to step into these throws knowing that you're going to get hit? And that's something that I haven't seen too much from. He hasn't been a problem, sort of say, before he got those ankle injuries. He wasn't a problem to me at all, other than that stupid shovel pass that he did at the goal line against LA. So other than that, he was very good, got injured, and that's what's kind of hampered his play thus far through 2 weeks against Tennessee and Miami. We've seen the limitations there. But overall, the injuries, like you said, I mean, we thought Baltimore was going through something. Indianapolis is going through just as much, if not more, which makes it an intriguing matchup, but we'll get into it a little later. The defense has very disappointed me a lot. Not too surprisingly, it is a Matt Eberflus defense, so it's probably not going to be that great. Xavier Rose is not playing up to par. Rock Ya-Sin is quietly playing good. He missed last week's game. TJ Carey's on IR. I mean, the run game is taking a heavy hit. The pass rush is not all the way there. It's absent at times. Offensive line, I can't say too much that I'm surprised that we're 1-3, given the injuries. If you would have told me that we had these types of injuries, I probably would have predicted the same thing, but we didn't. So I did predict this team would go 7-10 because of the problems that I saw on the roster at quarterback and pass rush, the potential problems with Carson Wentz, potential. So that's what my thoughts are through the first quarter of the season for the Colts. I still don't know yet what this team is because Carson's not healthy and we don't have T.Y. Hilton back. Quentin Nelson is not healthy. Ryan Kelly is not healthy. Eric Fisher is not back to his same strength. So we got to, especially on the defensive side, Darius Leonard as well. So that's where I'm at with this team through a quarter.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me before the year started that the Colts were 1-3, I would have been that shocked just because of how tough this first 5 weeks was going to be when the schedule came out. I mean, Seattle at home, Rams at home, to Tennessee, to Miami. I mean, on the schedule beforehand, like Miami sounded like a harder opponent as well. So I wasn't even chopping that game in as a win when the schedule came out. And then we have the Ravens in week 5. I think the Colts had the toughest first 5-week schedule in the NFL, in my opinion. Like when it first came out of it again, the Dolphins game ended up being a little bit different with Jacoby Brissett being the quarterback. So, I mean, I would have been that shocked, but I would have, if you would have asked me why the Colts were 1-3, I would have said Carson's probably not playing all that well. I would have said that the receivers are probably letting us down a little bit. I probably would have even went on to say that the secondary has been a big issue. What I wouldn't have told you was that the Colts offensive line has been an issue, that the Colts run defense has been an issue, that in general, the Colts strengths coming into this year have been weaknesses. It's not even that they're not strengths. They've been weaknesses. And that's really been the biggest issue through 4 weeks that we've seen. The Colts have to improve those spots. Hopefully, the Colts get a blessing with the Monday night game, and Braden Smith's going to be able to play. Hopefully, praying to the Lord, obviously. From what it sounds like, there's a chance he could play. So if Eric Fisher and Braden Smith are out there at tackle, Chris Reed is actually the best depth member of the Colts on that offensive line. So if he's out there in place of Quentin Nelson, who obviously Quentin Nelson's a much better player at guard than Chris Reed. But if I had to have any depth piece out there, it'd be Chris Reed. So we'll see, and we'll get into matchups in a little bit here. But the Colts have a lot of things to improve on, but we're coming off a win, thankfully. I mean, I'm not having to talk about this as an 0-4 football team. But the next question here is a little bit for all of us on the Ravens. Going into the year, Michael being one is very I wouldn't say he's a Lamar Jackson hater. I would say he's a critic. He's very critical of Lamar Jackson for sure. And he's been very critical of Lamar Jackson's ability as a true passer at the quarterback position. But has Lamar Jackson taken that next step as a thrower of the football? I usually would let Dave go first, but I'm going to let Michael go first just because I feel like going into this season, he may have been a little bit skeptical, to say the least.
Through 4 games, yes, he has. Yes, he has. I am very impressed with what I've seen from Lamar Jackson. The biggest thing for me is that he doesn't just tuck the ball down and just go run. Like, that's not his first instinct anymore. He will sit in the pocket. He'll roll out if the pocket collapses, but he won't run. He'll still keep his eyes downfield and make a play with his arm. Just like Dave was saying, he's making throws that he didn't make. The 15-yard out routes, the 7 routes, the 4 routes. Those were the routes that I thought that he didn't necessarily were very accurate with. But this year, the way his footwork is better. His form looks better. His poise in the pocket is better. All of that combined, I don't know what he did in the offseason, but it clearly worked. I'm not sure if he did some weird Dak Prescott dance with the hip or something like that, but this is just pure talent from Lamar Jackson. So now that he's showing that, you know what, instead of running, I'm just going to sit back and pass. But if that's not there, I can still run. Now we're talking about Lamar Jackson as an elite quarterback. Before, he was not in the elite conversation for me. If you're going to be an elite quarterback, you have to be able to throw the football any given time of a game, regardless of the situation. Lamar Jackson, through 4 games, is easily playing the best 4-game stretch of his career as a thrower of the football. He's so confident in his throws. I see it, the touch, the accuracy, the velocity. I mean, he's determined to throw the football. He will still run, and he is still the greatest athlete to ever play the quarterback position. That is still a fact. But the fact that from what I've seen through 4 games from Lamar Jackson has me even more scared to death about this game already. Last year, Dave, you remember, I said, take the run away and beg Lamar Jackson to throw. Now, I don't know what the hell we're going to do in this game. So I am pleased with Lamar Jackson. I have never labeled myself as a Lamar hater. I have always just looked at football, questioned his ability to throw the football at a high elite rate. He has always been one of the better leaders in the NFL. As a man, a leader, face of the organization, you can't find a better one unless it's Dak Prescott in Dallas. But I am very, very pleased with what I've seen from Lamar Jackson. He's definitely shut me up. He's definitely quieted my mouth. He is definitely on his way to being a very, very, very good thrower of the football.
So you mentioned the Lamar hater, and it reminded me of this point I've had for a couple of years. We need to have a middle ground with Lamar Jackson where you can praise him, but at the same time be critical of Lamar. And I don't think that there's that space yet available. Now, to the conversation about the improvements, he has made tremendous improvements. The footwork is far better than it's ever been. He's much more quiet in the pocket with his feet. Last couple of years, you'd see him kind of dancing around and doing a lot of moving and cutting. Now it's a little more fluid. The ball is coming out of his hand crisper. It's not that fluttering. Well, we have a term. We call him the duck, the dying duck that's flying through the air. Its wings been hit, and it's just kind of flailing to the receiver. It's crisper. He's more on target. He still makes mistakes that you sit there and go, you can't make those throws. But, I mean, in terms of mechanically, he is much better than he ever has been since he's been in the NFL. And everybody knew that the throwing was going to be a work in progress with him. But you knew the athlete that was Lamar Jackson. Now the throwing has caught up. Now you also see him in a better groove with his receivers. Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews have always been number 1, number 2, but now you're seeing Devin Duvernay getting in the offense. You're seeing James Prochet have a career day last week. Sammy Watkins Watkins has been exactly what the doctor has ordered for him in terms of that veteran receiver. Hey, you need 8 yards. Sammy's going to go run a 10-yard route for you. You just need to put the ball on him. He'll make the catch, get you the first down. That's huge for a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. Now, potentially, Rashad Bateman and Miles Boykin could be back. Those were 2 guys, especially Boykin, who is going to get lost in the shuffle because of now there's a wealth of talent there. But he was starting to catch fire with Lamar Jackson. He was the touchdown guy last year. So kind of like what Mike was saying, now as a defense, you're in a bind. Yeah, you can stop the run. And this year it's going to be the easiest it's ever been to stop the run because the Ravens don't have that true back yet. They haven't found whether it's Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, or Tyson Williams. They haven't found that consistent back. So you're keying on Lamar Jackson in the run game. But now this year, Lamar's like, okay, we want to put 7 guys in the box. I'll take one-on-one on the outside. I'll take my deep shots because my guy's going to run by your guy, and he's going to be open to make the play. That is this element of this offense that has just been lacking. And now that it is here, again, with all the injuries, it's really hard for me to sit here and say that this is a Super Bowl contender. But this is a team that if they stay healthy, is going to be a problem because now what do you do as a defensive coordinator? What do you do? What do you take away? What are you willing to allow the Ravens to do? Last year, you kind of took away the run because you didn't think they could beat you with the pass. And you were right. This year, they're beating teams in the air. I mean, that's how they came back on Kansas City was Lamar Jackson making throws in the second half. That's how they beat they should have beaten the brakes off the Lions, but everybody forgot their hands when they got off the team plane in Detroit. And then last week they made the catches, and when they made the catches, it was big plays. So you as a defensive coordinator, you have to ask yourself, okay, what am I willing to give up? And I don't know what that answer is. I really don't know what you're comfortable with now as a defensive coordinator, allowing the Ravens to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have all kind of touched on it. I mean, he's definitely taking that next step. I think the biggest thing for me when watching run first quarterbacks, a big step that they make when they do start to improve as a passer is they're not as quick to roll out and make that run. I think one of Lamar's issues the last couple of years, even in the MVP year personally, was he was very just early on his reads of when to run the football. He really didn't let some of the guys develop their routes long enough. He really never gave some of his receivers a chance. I think that's one of the reasons Brown has kind of struggled a little bit because he just was never really given that chance for his routes to ever develop, being that deep shot type receiver that he's wanting to be. I think this year, Lamar is being a little bit more patient in the pocket. I think he's waiting on these guys to be able to make some plays. I still think he rolls out, and which is fine. I do it all the time in Madden, for example. I like to roll out pretty much right off the snap. But I don't think that's an issue that Lamar likes to roll out often. I just think it's better that he's not being so run first, that he's not taking the snap, taking a second and a half to read the field and then run the football. He's being more patient. That was another big thing that I didn't hear you guys highlight, but I agree with almost everything you guys said as well. His mechanics, his footwork are also improving, but that was another thing I wanted to highlight for Lamar that I really think he has improved on. And real quick, before we get into this next topic, this topic is the One Call Technology topic of the day. One Call Technology is a managed telecom service provider whose senior staff has 100+ years of experience in virtually every aspect of business communications, business phone system installation and services, managed telecom service provider, telecom carrier management, and high-speed internet. Head on over to One Call's website at www.onecalltech.com or give them a call at 888-585-8850 and tell them the Blue Stable sent you. So, well, guys, we're here. We're done talking about the Colts and the Ravens individually. It's football time. It's matchup time. Monday Night Football is here. It's coming. I want to hear from Dave first. I'm gonna let you go first. And what's a matchup or a couple if you want to share, that you really like in favor of your Ravens this week?
I really like the matchup of the Raven defensive line one-on-one with the Colts offensive line. I think that the defensive line is deep. It is strong. You consider now Odafe Owe, who has been a real steal at number 31 in the draft for the Ravens with his speed. You have Justin Houston. You have Tyus Bowser. You have Calais Campbell, Brandon Williams, Justin Matabike, who, if you don't know his name, he is going to be very good. He is getting there. It's a tough matchup for a Colt offensive line that's going to have a banged-up Eric Fisher, potentially a banged-up Braden Smith. You don't have Quentin Nelson. That's going to be a tough matchup because, like Mike was talking about, you have a Colt team that is so prevalent on running the football and using their running backs involved in everything they do that if they can't get a push on that offensive line, I don't know how they're going to protect Carson Wentz, because then you allow Darren Martindale to do what he does best, which is blitz, and he blitzes from everywhere. He blitzes everybody. So if you have a quarterback that's got two bad ankles, you have team, by the way, Seahawks just missed a kick as I'm talking right here, 35-yarder. But you have that, and it's such a bad matchup for the Colts O-line. It really is. I don't know how they're going to protect Carson Wentz in open rush lanes with the way the Raven defensive line has played the last 2 weeks, which has been pretty damn dominant if you watched it.
Yeah, I agree.
Michael, go ahead and give us a matchup you really like where you think the Colts are in favor this week.
If his answer is none, that's the acceptable answer here.
Overreactive Twitter fans? I don't see a matchup that I like in this game at all. I don't see one. Normally, I would go to my safe guy, Michael Pittman, but these are some pretty damn good corners in Humphrey and Smith. Another big test for him, actually.
Here's what I will say. Now, Colt defense has been a disappointment. I think we can all agree on that.
We wish everyone could agree with that, David, but there is a branch of Colts Twitter that does not believe that is the case.
Well, I want to know what they're smoking because it must be something good. No offense. Like I don't. There are two defenses that you watch in the National Football League and say they should be better than they are, and that's Washington, and I would argue that that's the Colts defense. There's too much talent on that Colts defense. If there is any spot that is semi-favorable to the Colts, it would be their defensive line matched up on the Raven offensive line because of the same conversation we were just having, that the Raven offensive line is banged up, though it has played better the last couple weeks. But not having Alejandro potentially would be big because Andre Smith's best years are well in the past. But that maybe is the only spot where you sit there and go, okay, maybe you give the Colts the edge. I don't. Last year we were talking about how fast the linebackers were. Can you cover Lamar Jackson in space? I don't see the Colt. The Colt linebackers have regressed. I don't see that they're going to be able to. The Colt linebackers, and this may be an unfair comparison, kind of remind me of what you saw with Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch last year with the Dallas Cowboys, where you go, there is so much talent with this group, but they look lost. They take themselves out of position. They take themselves out of plays. I mean, it cost Jalen Smith his job in Dallas, and I can't help but I watched a couple Colt games, and I see that. I see that where it's like Darius Leonard is too good to be making the mistakes he's making. Bobby Okereke, Anthony Walker are too good to be doing what they're doing.
Well, Anthony Walker is in Cleveland.
Well, that hurts. That's on me for not getting that. But that
You're
hurts.
good. You're good.
He was a big part of stopping the Ravens offense for a half last year. But again, there is still talent at that linebacker position in Indianapolis. And it's got that feel of the Cowboys where you had Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, and the expectations were sky high, and they looked like they had really regressed. And I fear that that's what's happening to this Colt linebacker.
So I guess I'll push back a little bit here. I understand the comparison you're making. I don't think it's anywhere near the extent of the Dallas situation personally. I also think Vander Esch just kind of really got – I think the biggest issue with the Vander Esch situation is he got very overhyped very early. And I think that's unfair to players sometimes because then they're expected to fit this certain expectation where I just don't think his talent level was really ever there to hit it, in my opinion, of watching him now. I think a lot of Darius.
That's every rookie that comes to the Cowboys.
Well, I mean, you could probably just make the argument that it's a lot of rookies in general, depending on when they're drafted, the expectation they're given. But the thing with Darius Leonard this year, I mean, he is not playing at 100%, hasn't been able to the entire season, has been on the injury report each and every week. He's still been a difference maker. He's still been forcing turnovers. He's still been doing what he's good at. And the thing is, Colts fans, NFL fans have not really understood it the last couple of years. Darius Leonard's strength has never really been his coverage ability. That's just never been what it is. Some stats here and there have hid that. Like people like to say that I think PFF it was that like to say he held DeAndre Hopkins to 2 catches on 4 targets when he had to cover him, which was just a way overused stat that Colts fans have liked to use over the years to talk about his coverage ability. But that's not really Darius Leonard's strength. And I would argue the last couple of weeks, you can see some errors scheme-wise in this Colts defense because there's just so many arguments we see on the field. And that's on TV. I've been at the Colts games. I'm a season ticket holder for the Colts, and I'm in one of the end zones. I see them arguing all the time. Like on the field, you see Darius Leonard yelling at Julian Blackmon to get into position. You see them I saw Kenny Moore one time just pull a DB all the way into position. There's some definite miscommunication that have been going on. So I do want to push back there with him. The strength that I would give for the Colts going into this game, just because I'm not going to allow our fans to not hear one of us give a strength. Okay, Michael liked to cop out, but I actually have liked what I've seen from the Colts run defense the last 2 weeks. After the first 2 weeks just being abysmal, they allowed Seattle to run all over them, which was annoying to watch. They allowed a group of guys for the Rams to run the ball on them. But honestly, in the Tennessee game, I mean, Henry had a couple big runs to boost his stats near the end. But for the most part, they were taking him down at that 1 yard, 2 yard gang, and even in the backfield multiple times in that game. For the most part of the game, I would even argue in the Titans game. And then Miami, you could make the argument that they're just not a good running team at all. But I mean, they held that entire team to 32 rushing yards for the day. It was a really good day for the Colts run defense. I think the last 2 weeks, the Colts run defense has come back into fruition. I don't know if they're as good as they were last year yet, but they are definitely more so to the talent that they have there. And I don't trust the Ravens running backs to make a difference in this game yet. Like David said earlier, they just don't know who that guy is going to be yet. And I trust the Colts run defense to stop the running backs of the Ravens. That's the matchup I like to go. Now, obviously, there's the added ability of Lamar Jackson when you're talking about stopping the run. That's a whole different category of it, obviously. But I do like the Colts front versus these Ravens running backs as a strength for the Colts. And then going here to the next one, unless you have any comment you want to make on that, I wanted to let.
I'll say this. Fine. Lamar Jackson throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Hey, so, David, I'm willing to tell you this right now on air. I will bet you $10 Lamar Jackson does not go for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Passing.
Sure
I'll make it a bigger bet if you want.
Let's talk off air. I'm not putting anything down on air.
Okay.
Let's make it $500.
Hey, we'll talk off air. Just letting you know, though, I'm willing to put some green on that. But
big roller over here, apparently.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I was just saying, if you, I would be willing. But David, looking at you for the matchups that you don't like for your Ravens coming into this one? Is there a matchup that you look at Indy right now and you say, I don't like this coming into this game? And if you're that confident and you don't have any, that's completely fine. Just be honest. I like it.
I don't even think that it's overly confident. It's just there's no glaring like, oh my God, they're that much better than this group, if that makes sense. Where in the past, like, okay, Kansas City, okay, their receivers are far better than our defense backs, or Patrick Mahomes is just far better than Don Martindale. I don't see that. There isn't that huge gap, special teams wise, the edges, the Ravens. Defensively, I think that's a toss-up. Offensively, I would definitely say I think the Raven offense is more in rhythm. So it's tough to say. I would, if there's one, and it's not so much because the Colts are that good, it's more so of a question of, okay, can the Raven receivers do it again? Can they get open? Can they make the plays that they did a week ago that they didn't do in Detroit? If they can make the plays that they did in Denver, then it's not a weakness. But because there's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde with this Ravens receiving group right now, to not sound like a complete homer, that is a little bit of a, okay, well, we'll see what receiver group the Ravens have on Monday night.
Well, Colts fans, I'm sorry, but I hate every matchup in this game for us. I really do. Dustin mentioned the run game. I mean, goodness gracious. Darius Leonard sometimes out of position, Bobby Okereke or Okereke out of position. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, who are actually pretty good in the run game. Not having two edges that, the Colts really miss Justin Houston and Danico Autry that played those two outside positions, set the edge, really force the running back to bounce it back inside rather than just going out. I feel like that's what we're going to see in this game. Al-Qadim Muhammad just might get moved, and he's probably been our best edge thus far this season. Kwity Paye is probably not going to play, so who are you going to start? Tyquan Lewis? We'll see how these two can come together. If there was one I possibly had to say would be that I liked would be what Dustin said earlier, but everything else, the speed on the outside, Brown, Duvernay. I mean, Kenny Moore got beat by Chester Rogers on a simple drag route. It wasn't even close. Xavier Rhodes has just been poor. Isaiah Rodgers, he's got that speed. I'm interested to see how he does in his second week starting, depending on if Rocky Sin is able to play. But, I mean, Lamar, the X factor on the offensive side, the toughness up front, are we able to even match that toughness on the Baltimore Ravens side of the football? In the secondary, Deshaun Elliott, I didn't think much of him at Texas, but being in the NFL, being coached under John Harbaugh and those boys, he is definitely taking the next level, taking the next step as a safety. And then you just got the two dogs on the outside, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey. I mean, hell, I really, really hope we can get Jimmy Smith somehow, some way. If there's a miracle, I want him so much. Trade for him.
That man is going to retire a Raven.
I sure hope not, but he's just a corner that I love so much. I would have traded for him before I traded for Stephon Gilmore. But yeah, the matchups in this one, being on the road, highlighting everything that Dave talked about. This team is going to be hyped up. The stadium is going to be loud. There's going to be emotions in that stadium. How are we going to respond? Are the Colts going to just step up and be men about this game? Are they just going to block for the quarterback or not? And the wide receivers interest me. Our receiving core versus y'all secondary. Again, I'm going to keep highlighting Pittman. I'm very interested, and I'm actually struggling to decide if I should even start him in my fantasy league. But oh man,
Michael, if you don't start him, you don't believe in him. You've been talking this whole offseason. Now, what I'm about to say next will probably make you not start him. But the matchup that I don't like the most going into this game for the Colts is the receivers versus the corners of Baltimore. I don't think that's me saying – because honestly, I've been pleasantly surprised by Pittman so far this year having to play as that receiver one. Had a great game with Ramsey covering him on most of his targets against the Rams. He had a really good game against the Rams. The biggest part about that game, I've told Michael off air, was the dog mentality we've seen from Pittman this year, where he was jawing with Ramsey the entire game. And Ramsey's known to talk crap the entire game. That's just who he is. But not many receivers get back in his face, and Pittman did that day. But I really like the corners in Baltimore. I really like Humphrey. I obviously love his personality in the media room and everything as well, but his on-field play, I've just always been a fan. I'm really interested to see. Jimmy Smith's another guy who is very talented at the cornerback position. Marcus Peters is out for the year, but he's another guy that is a talented corner, but he's not going to be out there on Monday, obviously. But after Pittman, there's just been very little separation. Pascal has been himself, very consistent piece, very consistent receiver. Paris Campbell's been pretty disappointing, not been able to create separation with the speed he has. And they're going to need the receivers to step up if they're going to pull out an upset, apparently, since Michael and Dave don't want to give the Colts any shot in this one, it sounds like. But the receivers are going to have to be a big portion if the Colts are going to go in to Baltimore and upset these fans as much, if not more, than when Irsay left in the middle of the night.
Well, now you had to go and be a dick. And you had to go and say that, Destin. And now you pissed me off. Now you went and
oh, boy.
Take the knife. You couldn't just hold the knife and twirl it. You had to take the knife and you had to just stick it in the back. You just couldn't help yourself. You just couldn't help yourself. I hope the Colts aren't on the schedule next year. I don't want to have
Hey, I respect it. But it won't matter because we're gonna play in the AFC Championship game. Amen, everybody. Colts versus Baltimore AFC Championship. But just kidding, of course. We don't know what's gonna happen, and that's probably not the matchup that I would suggest right now. But
I don't know if Baltimore's gonna be there, but
yes, because you've been talking so positive about the Colts today, Michael. But up next here, before we head on out and make some predictions, what are the 3 keys to victory for each side? So, Dave, I'm going to let you give all 3 since you're the only one here for Baltimore, unless you're listening and think Michael's here covering Baltimore, because you might be. And then we'll go back to the Colts, and I'll give 2, and Michael will give 1 keys to victory for this week. So, Dave, give me 3 keys to victory that Baltimore has to do if they want to come out with a win.
Well, number 1, they have to tackle better. Tackling has been a real woeful problem for the Ravens. It's a systematic-wide NFL issue, but it is really glaring with the Ravens, who usually are a short tackling team. If they cannot tackle, I don't care who they're playing. It's going to be a close game. Second key will be sticking to what works, whether it's the run game, whether it's the passing game. Greg Roman has a tendency to get away from what's working from time to time. I think if you can get the run game going with Murray, Freeman, or Bell, which I think they have in terms of just for a 1 year, I think they have a pretty good running back room, but you need to find that hot hand, and it just needs to go. And it may be Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell did not look as bad as I thought he was going to look in a Raven uniform. So find that hot hand is number 2 key in that running back room, just to get 3-4 yards against that Colt defense, just to pound up the middle, to give Lamar Jackson, give that offense a threat in the play action passing game, because that's so critical now to their game plan is the play action pass. And then number 3, can you get pressure on Carson Wentz? We know he's got 2 bad ankles. You have Odafe Away. You have Tyus Bowser, Pernell McPhee, Justin Houston. Can they get home? If they get home like they did against the Denver Broncos, you're going to see a 23-7 type of game, because the Colts are just going to struggle to move the football if the Ravens can get consistent pressure on Carson Wentz. It is what it is. The line is bad. It's banged up. Wentz is banged up. He'll be a sitting duck. If they get pressure, it's going to be a long night for Indy.
Hey, and we're going to move over to the 3 keys to victory for the Colts. I'm going to give 2. Michael's going to give 1. I'm going to give the first one. The first one's going to be that the offensive line needs to hold up. I'm even going to go specific and give a number. The Colts offensive line cannot allow more than 2 sacks in this one. I think they need to be stout no matter who's out there. If Braden Smith can't go and we're going to see Julian Davenport or Matthew Pryor at right tackle, they have to be better. Eric Fisher, who's not playing at 100% either after the torn Achilles this January, has not looked good the last 2 weeks, to say the least. He has to be better. I think the interior is the strength right now, but the offensive line has to hold up, cannot allow more than 2 sacks.
Okay. Quick question. When did Jason Owe change his name to Odafe?
Odafe was his given birth name. He Jason because he was tired of people mispronouncing the name, because the name looks like Odafe. If you Odafe. So he, growing up, did not want his name to continue to be mispronounced. So he went with Jason. That way it was a little more easier for people to pronounce. But
okay,
he got drafted. He wanted to go back to his maiden name, Odafe.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I have a weird last name, and it's very annoying to hear that get screwed up all the time. I just had to ask the question, because when someone said Odafe Owe, I'm like, who the hell is Dafe Owe? And then I saw the highlight. I'm like, that's Jason Owe. Like, when did that happen? Okay.
My favorite pronunciation of Michael's last name, just for on the record on the show, is still Terrasauce. Terrasauce. I don't know how that's not your Twitter handle yet, just saying. But Michael, I'll let you go to that second point.
Right. I remember Cody came in and said teriyaki sauce. Okay. Mine has to be, and I'm gonna keep saying this, man. Get the ball to Michael Pittman. When we get the ball to him, this offense moves. This offense goes. The ball moves down the field. Get the ball to Michael Pittman. I can't stress this enough. I would have gone with the run game, obviously, but I still want to continue to see. This is a great season to go against the corners he's been, because this is only just escalating and speeding up his development. Going against either play, you're going to go up against Jimmy Smith or Marlon Humphrey. That's a given on whichever side of the ball you line up on. I'm not even sure if John Harbaugh is going to have them follow or anything. Just line up. If you land on them, cool. But it's got to be get the ball to Michael Pittman for me. It has to be.
I know we talked about Lamar Jackson being an improved passer of the football. But I still think that needs to be the focus on defense. I still think you need to make Lamar Jackson's arm beat you. We all highlighted it. We think Lamar Jackson's taken that next step. But we definitely would rather a Lamar Jackson arm beat us than Lamar Jackson's legs. You have to not neutralize, because that's easier said than done, but you have to do what you can to take his legs out of the winning department for them. You need to make him throw the ball. So Eberflus, the linebacking core, the defensive line, they need to make it a point all week, which I'm sure they are, to make Lamar Jackson throw the ball. Looking at his games this season, he has thrown the ball quite a bit. 30 attempts, 26 attempts, 31, 37 attempts. Make this be the most attempts he's had all year. That needs to be the focus. You want to make that the case. So if 37 is the most he's had, and that was last week against Denver, 38's that benchmark. Make him throw it at least 38 times. That needs to be the focus on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's all.
Right.
Hey, and he's improved. He is. But, I mean, I still think when you look at it, you can hang your hat at the end of the day better on a Lamar Jackson beat you throwing the football than you allowed Lamar Jackson to run for over 100 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. I will just feel better sleeping at night if he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on me. That's just my
I think
personal
it's
preference.
I think it's just more of a can he be consistent with it from what Destin's coming from. I think it's just a matter of can he be consistent. He's showing it, but can he be consistent if I throw this at him, if I throw this coverage at him? So I think that's where Destin is coming from. I agree.
And I didn't mean any ill will towards it about him. I just think that's just that has to be your game plan going in. But getting on to predictions here, we're gonna smush David in the middle of us. So we're gonna go Michael, David, then me for the predictions. So Michael, score prediction and all. I bet I can guess where you go on this one. But go ahead and give us your winner and the score.
You know, man, I think, and Dave mentioned this earlier in the show, the Ravens have been overperforming. I think Monday, this is a game that I think the Colts last year wished that they could have back. This is a game that really pissed them off. I remember coming on the show after that game and saying the Colts were the better team. They just beat themselves. And a game-changing play by Marcus Peters, making Jonathan Taylor fumble the football. This is a game they want back. This is a game they remember. And I'm actually going to bank on the Ravens kind of coming back to earth a little bit. I'm going to go with the Colts in this game. I'm going to go with them. I think it is going to be a bruising football game. I think it's going to be a hard-hitting, maybe a couple fights. Both teams are definitely going to wake up sore on Tuesday morning. So I'm going to take the Colts, and I'm actually going to take them 28-20.
I'm not
a bruising 8-point win. I love it.
I'm not even entertaining that. Ravens could lose this game. I'm not saying that it is impossible, but the way they're playing right now, they will get up for this game. They will probably not beat the Chargers the following Sunday. I had the Ravens winning 27-10. I don't know, with all the injuries to the Colt offense, how they're going to be able to move the ball against Raven defense.
Hey, I'll say this: Colts football is very confusing. First off, I don't know which team we're going to get week in and week out. But if it's not my prediction, then I'm going to go with Dave. I think it's going to be a blowout win for Baltimore. The score is going to be closer than the actual play on the field will indicate.
I am shocked that Michael took the Colts still. I just spent an entire episode feeling like it was me against two Ravens fans. And then Michael said a bruising 8-point win for the Colts. I got to put that on the t-shirt, by the way, a bruising 8-point win. But so I'm going to take the Colts in this one. But I was positive I was going to be the only one. I'm going to go a little bit closer than Michael did. I'm going to go the Colts end up winning this one 24-20. So a 4-point win. I think 20 is a pretty good benchmark for what I think the Colts defense needs to do. If the Colts can hold the Ravens to 20 or less, I think the Colts win this football game. If the Ravens do end up being able to score in the high 20s, low 30s, I do think this ends up being a Ravens win. But I think the Colts defense is pissed off. I think the Colts defense is realizing that they've been underperforming, even if a branch of our Colts fans believe that the defense has been completely fine and would love for them to play like this every single week, apparently. I think this needs to be a game where they come out and show out. They're on prime time. The Colts don't get this that often. They have a few of them this year. They need to show up for it. 24-20 Colts. I think it's going to be a fun one, though. I think of the schedule, of the first 5, even before the year, this is the one I was the most excited for. I like watching Lamar Jackson, even when he wasn't that great of a passer. I just think he's a very electrifying player. I'm super excited to be able to watch him against the Colts and see what they do. But we'll see what happens. I just still don't think he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Well, timestamp it. We'll come back to this.
Hey, I like it. I like it.
Look, man, I am scared to even go 1-4. I am so scared. Like I just don't want to be 1-4. So they better pull this win out. I swear, dude. If it's 1-4, I think it's almost panic button time. I don't know. The schedule we got coming up, little bit favorable, but still don't want to be 1-4. I really don't.
Hey, we've seen a Colts team go 1-5 and end up being fine in our lifetime, Michael. We've seen it.
They also had Andrew Luck as the quarterback. So
who's that?
come on now.
Who's that? We don't say his name here.
Did you just say who is that?
Yeah, who is that? We don't say his name on this podcast right now. But
that is disrespectful.
Real quick, I do want to thank David for coming on, repping his Ravens, repping them well. We had a fun time last year talking. Just as a throwback to last year, I still don't think TJ Watt's a linebacker. But I am super thankful that you came on. Make sure you guys go and check out David on Twitter. David, go ahead and give us your Twitter handle. And if you have a Twitter handle for your podcast specifically, go ahead and drop that as well.
At Announcer Dave S is where you can find me on Twitter. At Kickoff Pod, we've got some great stuff coming up. Next week, we got Pro Football Focus. Ben Linney, who's an NFL analyst, is going to come on. We're going to break down everything heading into week 6 of the NFL. So be sure to check it out after you check out, of course, this podcast.
All right. Benny coming on talking about how the Ravens got their ass kicked. All right. I love it. I'm going to tune in for that one.
Can I mute? I can't mute. God damn it. I'm done. I'm out of here.
Hey. I respect it. I respect it. Thanks for coming on, guys. As always, you guys have been listening to the Blue Stable podcast, the official Colts podcast of Fansided. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and make sure you're listening to this wherever you find your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, or anywhere else. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Colts.